Welcome to Qlick, a podcast about people, property and places. I'm your host, Josh Kindred. We're podcasting today out of Redcliffe, our HQ, and we're joined today by Australasia's #1 auctioneer, Justin Nickerson. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure, thanks for having me.
So, Justin, a couple of quick facts about you. Love a piccolo, that's your go-to coffee. You're a massive Lions supporter, and you've called auctions all around Australia, New Zealand. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
That's kind of it, mate, really. You've kind of hit the big three straight away. Never drank coffee before I got into real estate. Now trying to wean myself from 3 to 2 a day. So some days I'm really good at it, some days not so. Big Lions fan, loved the Lions since I was a little kid, and still a little kid really when it comes to the Lions. Still a little kid. And yeah, auctioneering has been my core trade for better part of a decade now, calling auctions through Australia, call auctions across the ditch, as you mentioned, New Zealand as well.
Yep.
And do a lot of training around auctions and real estate in general.
Awesome. So real estate, you've been in real estate for just over a decade, coffee addict for just over a decade. What got you into it?
It's a really, really interesting question, and I think I'm like a lot of people.
Before you go there, how old were you?
When I got into real estate?
Yeah.
Well, if I say that, everyone will know how old I am now.
That's all right.
I was in my early 20s.
Okay.
Yep. So when I came out of school, like most school leavers, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I think you know what you don't want to do, but it's very hard to identify what you do want to do. So I was a little bit kind of, I'll probably go to uni and do a degree, which is just kind of the fallback for me because there was no real purpose. But I actually got a job at the AFL. So I worked with the AFL for a number of years prior to leaving school, and then got a job when I came out of school. Worked in Brisbane, lived in Mackay, lived in Mount Isa, doing a lot of junior development and talent kind of recruitment.
Awesome.
Things. Yeah, it was really enjoyable. But it's a job that it's a job you struggle to do for a long time. And probably there was people in it that I looked at them at their stage of their life. They might have been 45, didn't have a lot of financial wealth, which is not the be-all and end-all, but probably didn't have a lot of personal wealth either. They had either no relationships or broken relationships with their partner, with their kids, just through the travel that it probably took, and also spending weekends doing footy stuff. So I bought a property through that journey, sold it, timed the boom in Mackay somehow. So I thought, how easy is real estate? All you do is buy a house and you make a lot of money and then sell it and then buy another one. So I handed it all back on my next purchase though, as you do.
As you do.
But then I sort of came back and I thought, well, I want to do something that I can create a financial future for myself. Didn't have a uni degree. Wanted to wear some nice clothes and potentially drive a nice car. And I think when that's your criteria, most people end up in real estate. And that's kind of how it worked.
Never seen that before.
No, never. No, isolated story, that one. So, yeah, that was kind of how it worked out, that real estate became my calling, so to speak.
Yeah, fantastic. So that coaching element is something that's obviously been with you and stayed with you right now. You do some coaching for our guys in our business, our real estate business, and we love having you doing that. Tell us about the coaching that you do now, and why do you how did you, I suppose, include coaching in a real estate career?
Yeah, Mum always said I'd make a good teacher, actually. And it's funny because that's kind of what we do now, really. We do teaching, and I think the approach I've always tried to take with teaching, I think that it's very easy to disengage someone if you stand at the front and tell them what they should be doing. I think if you stand up and say, look, this is what I've seen done with success, and you can make small alterations to what you do that can actually improve your business and by proxy improve your results. That's kind of the approach I've always taken to it, and I really enjoy training. I'll put a counter mark on that. I enjoy training with businesses and people that want to learn and want to develop and want to grow. Yeah. As a trainer, it's incredibly inspiring and uplifting when you deal with those kinds of people. On the flip side to that, you do come across groups and individuals that just don't either have a capacity for growth at that particular time or just are at a stage where they're not ready to take on new things. And that can be quite demotivating. You sort of jump in front of them and you tell them, this is stuff that can help you, and everyone sort of nods and smiles and maybe writes some notes down in the book. But then you're back in front of them the next month and nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed, yeah. So I suppose, did somebody inspire you? Was there a great coach or an inspiration, a mentor when you started out in real estate?
I've had a few. So my first auctioneering mentor was a guy called Jason Andrew, who was kind of the pioneer of independent auctioneering in Queensland in a lot of ways. So he was probably my first mentor that really, from a technical point of view, showed me how to call an auction, how to build an auction business, to create relationships. A lot of the training that I do is probably stuff that I've learned from him, and then kind of modified along the way. So he was probably my first one. Then I had another mentor who I work with more towards the competition element. So how do I start to win competitions? How do you start to really develop your skill? Because I think most coaches and mentors and trainers, or sorry, all of them have a use by date. I think it's very hard to continually be the right person for that person for a long period of time, because people grow and they change, and you sort of get to your capacity with that person, and then the best mentors, I think, are people who can then step aside and say, look, I've probably taken this person or this group as far as I can. This person now has a skill set to get them to do different stuff. So I probably had a few along the way, either kind of formal mentors that you actually, they know you're the mentor and that, but you have a lot of informal mentors too that people don't even know they're mentoring you, and you pick stuff up. And there's examples of those in everyday life, and even you look at a business like yours, which is always find when you walk in this building, it's an incredibly vibrant place, and there's a really just a really good feel when you walk inside, and that is a form of coaching, because by proxy you've created an environment that actually I'm learning, hey, this is a good feel when you walk inside this office. So I think there's formal mentors, but also informal as well. Yeah,
it's a really interesting way to look at it. Great insight. Probably the only counter to great coaches that can live on is Alistair Clarkson, a fantastic Hawks coach. I'll just throw that in there, even though we've copped a couple of losses from your
10th. Can someone check the ladder? I don't look below third these days, mate. So it's all, you might as well be last. If you're not in the top three, and equal first, really, to be fair, is probably where it sort of stops at the moment. So
all right, I'll leave that one, even though we are the most successful AFL team of the last couple of decades.
In your opinion.
Tell me about your first day in real estate. Do you have a story? I wrote this question down because I remember mine and it was crazy. So I thought Margaret will ask you, and hopefully there's something cool.
I don't, mate. No, to be fair, I was actually just across the bridge in Sandgate. I've got a dreadful memory, so it probably helps me in a lot of cases because I can shrug things off pretty quickly because I can't remember them. But no memory. But I'd love to hear yours. So, Josh, do you have a first day in real estate? Do you have a memory to that?
I'm not going to share mine right now. It was in Cairns, and something horrific happened. So I walked into a house with blood everywhere. Cairns is a bit of a crazy place.
Not an uncommon thing in Cairns.
Some parts of Cairns. We were down in, I'm not going to say that actually. It was very interesting as a young 17-year-old to walk into a home and be going to sell it after the circumstances that had occurred. It was an interesting first day, but... Mate, tell me about...
just a point, mate. I've got a joke about Cairns. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah, love to.
Where do backpacking baked beans end up?
Very good. Cairns.
There you go.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Well done. Some of your finest work. Tell me, so you bought a property in Mackay, of all places. I hear about the Mackay, I suppose, region, especially through exposure with the REIQ, that market's up and down, it's tough. Tell me about what it was like to buy there, and what made you buy?
I've probably come from I've had a strong influence from my parents from a business background, and my dad's run a business for many years, and mum's an accountant by profession. So I probably always had pretty sound financial and business advice. And when I was going to live up there, they kind of looked at the rents and looked at the prices of properties, and quite rightly they pushed me in the direction of buying a property instead of renting. And I bought a property where you could rent out downstairs and live upstairs, so you kind of had that element to it as well. And it just timed it. It was just on the right end of the boom, and did really well out of it. Like I said, it wasn't the precursor to every deal after that being the same, but I think it definitely sowed a seed. And I do remember the experience we had with the real estate agent being quite ordinary.
Okay.
Just in terms of follow-up and just really basic stuff. And I remember thinking, oh, gee, that must be kind of the standard or how things work. And it probably, you talk about mentors again, in a way that person coaches you because they actually coach you in a way to say, hey, you can do this better. And if you do it the same as her, this is the experience that you're going to feel, or the way you're going to feel. So So bought the property there and just thought it was a good way to sort of invest and not pay rent, and that's kind of been foundation of thinking then for over and above.
So so do you tell us as much as you want here? Do you own property now? What sort of property do you look for? What does that look like for you?
I do own property now, yeah. So I bought a property, or we bought a property, I should say, a couple of years ago. There was probably going to be a longer term home in Brisbane.
Yep.
I'm a bit of a sucker for a view. So
Whereabouts in Brizzy?
East Brisbane.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Property price is set to explode there.
Yeah. Right now.
Definitely right now. Yeah. As of this podcast. So, I've always been a sucker for a view. So I've always kind of been, look, I don't really care that much about the house. I just want something nice to look at. And over these parts, obviously, it's usually the ocean. When you're going towards the city, which is kind of where we had to be for work geographical purposes, it was a city view. So stumbled across an old Queenslander that was kind of over and above what we wanted to spend, but had a great outlook on the city and the Story Bridge. And as soon as it had that, I was in.
Yep.
And that was kind of the dream from there. So I've always been of one that probably buying unfinished products is more me, and then having good intentions to renovate them, whether that happens or not. Sometimes not always the case, but that's always been my strategy.
So you bought a Queenslander, East Brisbane. Have you renovated?
Look, we've done some pretty extensive. No, we haven't. We've done a bit of yard work, and that's really about it. So
Trim the hedges.
I've mowed the lawn.
You mow the lawn?
I actually don't. No, so I haven't even done that myself. So no, I'm not blessed with good hands. So I get calluses just thinking about doing renovations, to be honest.
Yeah, right. But someone else will. The next buyer.
The person who's good at it will do it. Yeah, or the next buyer. That's right. But no, I've committed myself to working hard and hopefully being able to fund them and let someone else do the handiwork.
Yeah, excellent. And so have you got investment aspirations in property now? Is that something that you're always looking for? You obviously see a lot of property. Yeah,
I've had a few investment properties across the journey in different areas, and have kind of just been different opportunities that have bobbed up, more so than a strategy to say I'm going to buy in this place, or it's just kind of been, that seems like pretty good value and not a bad area, and going a little bit on gut feel. But I've probably the investment strategy I've had semi-recently has been more inside businesses, more so than property. But I also like diversification too, shares and property and businesses, a little bit of everything.
It surprises me, and I wonder if you can shed some light on this. It surprises me the amount of people that I've had exposure to in this industry that have bought property but really don't have a strong strategy. And it's that, well, this property bobbed up and I went ahead with it. I can think of a guy right now in our office who's extremely successful, and he's been talking about getting investment property for the last couple of years. And you can float one past him that he sees and he goes, I might buy it. And then there's just no strategy behind it. Yeah. Have you seen guys with good strategy? Is there a reason that happens?
I think it's education. I think what you're exposed to. I know a few people that are kind of on both sides of the coin. You think that why not invest into money rather than having it sit in the bank, invest in a property rather than having the money sit in the bank. And then you see other people that have got really rigid kind of not only a criteria for what they buy, but they're very rigid in the process. Okay, I'm going to buy a property here and I'm going to pay this much down on it and then go. So I think it's a lot of education. I said I was lucky that my education as a formative adult years was probably around accounting and business, which is the influence of my parents. But I think if other people didn't have that influence when you're in your young adult years, unless you seek it out, you never grow it.
There's a real lack of education, isn't there, for property? I think that's not just generational right now for the younger generation. That's across the board. There's not a lot of education in property.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of. I don't think there's a lot of education without agenda. I think that's the problem. Right. Is you see a lot of property seminars and they're informative and educational, but there's always a hook. It's like, you come along and you're going to sit there, but for 4 hours we're going to try and sell you, our investment strategy. And I think there's not enough agenda-free education where it's just, hey, there's no agenda here. Come along and learn about this stuff because this stuff is important. The financial decisions you make in your early 20s have ramifications on your life for many years. I know. I bought a car in my early 20s that was not a car that I should have bought. I bought a Holden Ute, black Holden Ute. So I got a story about this actually. If there's no time limit, I'll tell you this story. Yeah,
tell us.
So I bought this black Holden Ute. I went through a stage of thinking that I was already pretty cool, but I just wanted to get a little bit cooler. And the only thing to make it cooler at that age is a black Holden ute.
Yes.
So I had as a VS ute, for those Commodore fans out there. Bought this ute, which was above what I should have been spending on a car at that particular point in time. So it's a bad financial decision. And much as I had advice from my parents who suggested it's not the best investment, when you're as bullheaded as I am, you sometimes take it and sometimes don't. So I bought this Holden ute, got about 6 months down the track of driving it and decided that I actually don't like Holden utes all that much. I was never a car person, still not a car person, and every time it rained, I'd fishtail through roundabouts and just thought this is a bad decision. So anyway, went to sell this ute and I actually put it up for sale, and I hadn't put a lot of Ks on it at that stage. I wasn't doing a lot of driving, and came up to sell it. And this lady, I still remember the day, so this lady was going to buy it for her son who was attending churchy as his whip around ute.
Yep.
You know,
awesome.
the blessed few.
What worst decision ever.
Yep. Anyway, I picked her up from the train station, this lady from the country, and she was just going to take the car for a quick spin around, pay it. She was actually going to pay me more than I bought it for. Which is never the case. Like in a car transaction, it never happens. So anyway, picked her up, walked to the car, took the car on, tried to stern, the car wouldn't start.
No.
Never happened before. Car wouldn't start, honestly. Car wouldn't start. So went to McCormack's Auto at Sandgate. Good friends of the McCormack's. As a quick plug if you need any auto needs.
McCormack's at Sandgate.
Do you have a sponsor for the podcast?
We've got McCormack's now.
McCormack's, yeah, for all your automation needs. So anyway, went to McCormack's and they towed it there, which is only a couple of 100 metres, but they had to tow it because the car wouldn't start. Turned out the motor had seized the engine.
No way.
New engine. Yeah. And of course the lady didn't want to buy it, understandably.
Oh, I wonder why.
So I ended up about $5 or $6 grand less than I would have, because I had to pay not only for the new engine but also lost money on selling it to the next buyer. So there was a financial decision at that point in my life that cost you $5,000 or $6,000, and when you're in your early 20s or your late teens, that's a lot of money. So I think that coming back to the
hopefully she went and bought her son a Hyundai XL.
I doubt
or something safe.
I doubt it. Yeah, I don't think so. But I think you make decisions in your early 20s where you don't really put enough time and care into those decisions, and then they can actually carry pretty heavy ramifications for your life.
Yeah, I think certainly we've seen a lot of people do that in property. Obviously, does auction expose you more to that type of property poor decision type experience? You know, there's I suppose a bit of a thought process or a perception that auction picks up some of the properties that are mortgagees or people that are struggling. Is that the case? Do you have more exposure to that?
Maybe a little bit.
Or is it a bit of a myth?
It's probably a bit of a myth. When I first started, I first started calling auctions in 2010, and I don't know if you remember the market in 2010.
Yes, very well.
Yeah, you would have been in your early 30s or something by then, wouldn't you?
No. Nope.
So 2010, the market was really tough, and we were probably doing about 30% of the auctions we were doing are mortgagees.
Yeah,
and it's never been that high again. So it's probably now sub 5%. In terms of those. So I think in the early stages, yes, definitely. And you saw a lot of people who had overcommitted, people who had, bought it at levels they couldn't afford to service, made poor decisions around who they went with, how they repaid money, all that kind of stuff. So a little bit at the start, but probably not as much as you'd expect.
So really it's probably that the myth just lasts or carries on because when the market is tough, the banks are choosing to use auction.
Yeah, well, auctions deemed to be fair market value, so that's why the banks do it. Same as deceased estates. Quite often we do deceased estates. The reason why they go that path is because there's either a dispute in the estate or they need to be seen to achieve fair market value. So that's why they adopt and take that process on. So
tell me, I'm going a little bit all over the shop here, but why is auction a great way for somebody to sell? And is it the best way to sell?
How long do you have?
Try and give us a 1 minute wrap up of why you'd auction your property.
I think in this marketplace, the big benefit you have for auction is it gives you transparency. So I think auction gives you, as a buyer, it gives you transparency over your competition, but as a seller, it gives you transparency to the market as well. And I think the flaw in this marketplace is that there's just so much inconsistency that it's hard to get a reasonable price baseline on things. And the mistake you make is you list the property and it's too high, and you waste your best first couple of weeks of inquiry, which is your best buyers, and then all of a sudden, you haven't achieved the result you want to get. Or conversely, you list it too low, it sells too quickly, and potentially you could have got more money. So I just think it's a process that allows time. It allows you time to meet your buyers and your sellers at the
Right.
same point at the same time, and that's an important thing in this market. I believe in auction because I'm clearly paid to call auctions, so it's a bit of a paid advertisement. But ideally, if I was going to sell my own property, I'd auction it.
Right. So, obviously, a huge advocate for the auction process, and so are the banks, and what we call fair market value, on-site or in-room auctions.
Any auctioneer that tells you they prefer on-site is a liar, because you call more auctions in a shorter amount of time at an in-rooms. You don't have to deal with traffic, you don't have to deal with weather, and you don't have to deal with any neighbours that fire up their whippersnipper at that point in time.
Right.
So I always think on-site auctions are fantastic. A little bit like a garden wedding. If everything is right, on-site auctions are fantastic. You know, you can picture that you're standing on the property, you're looking out over the bay, it's beautiful. You know, Migaloo goes past, it's just magic, right? The next day, it's pouring down with rain. Migaloo's nowhere to be seen, and the neighbour next door, who you've had a dispute with for 3 years, decides that's the optimal time to start up trimming his hedges with his chainsaw on that side of the boundary. So you just open the door for that risk, I think.
Right.
Plus, also you get to use a gavel in rooms, so you don't use a gavel on site, so it's a little bit of a chance to whip that out and give it a go.
Right. So you don't use the gavel on site.
No, I'm a bit of a hand talker, so I like having my hands clear. So I have a like a brochure or something in one hand, but then my other hand always like being free. I think if I have a gavel, it's all kind of like,
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a body language thing. They say when your hands are open, you're being honest. So you're an honest auctioneer. Yep.
I like to think so.
Yep. Great. You brought your gavel in today.
Gavels.
Brought 2 gavels in.
Yeah.
Tell us about your gavels. You got a white one and a black one. Just to describe.
Now, I know you're mature enough to handle this conversation, so you can tell a lot about auctioneer about his gavel. To be honest, I noticed, is that Frankie's? That
is Frankie's gavel. He's got a larger gavel, and he's got a more of a tan gavel.
And good on Frankie. It's a very nice looking gavel he has. I don't like really big gavels. Just for the sake, I always feel like you're wielding a sledgehammer and it's all just a bit too hard to control. So neither of these are actually the gavel.
I thought I was mature before we started this conversation.
Yeah, I knew this was dangerous
So
territory.
no, please keep going.
So I've actually probably got, by best estimate, probably 8 gavels would be my
Wow.
best estimate. Yeah, one for all seasons. But there's one that I use all the time, which you get very used to I know it sounds funny, but you get used to the size of it and the feel of it. That's why when you use that one's actually quite small. That little white one.
It is.
So it'd actually be too small for me to use because you just be fidgeting with it because it wouldn't fit in your hand well. The other one is actually my favourite gavel. It's actually too good to use. I've never used it. So when I won one of the auctioneering competitions that I won in Alice Springs, of all places, they actually gave me that gavel, which was handmade by an Aboriginal artist.
Oh wow!
And it's made of really nice wood from a traditional tree in Alice Springs, and he'd handcrafted it and painted it and everything. So it's a bit of a sentimental one, that one, but it's too good to use. So it's just a display gavel only.
Display gavel. Why do you have 8 gavels? Sorry, I just had to ask.
You kind of just accumulate them, to be honest.
Right.
It's quite funny. Sometimes when you do charity auctions or you do events for people, they actually give you a gavel.
Okay.
You're sort of like, well, pretty sure I've got a gavel already, but thanks for the
Thanks
thought
for the
all
gavel.
the same. Yeah, it's like getting a builder to come around and build you a new kitchen and give him a hammer at the end of it. Like, here you go, mate. Didn't think you had one of these, so here you go. But no, I'd actually very rarely use them other than in rooms, so I probably just accumulate them and then don't use them. One of my best mates who does some woodwork on the side as a side business. He's got Elm Handmade, second sponsor.
Elm Handmade.
Handmade, yep. So for all your woodwork needs, he can help you out.
Where is he?
He's in South Australia.
Okay.
Yep.
So, mate, you've done some travel. Alice Springs for a gavel. You got a South Australian gavel. What's your favourite place? What's your favourite place to call an auction?
Ooh, mate, that's tough. That's really tough. Favourite place to call an auction or favourite place to go?
Call an auction.
I actually really like the Baysides. I actually like both Sandgate and also we do a lot through Wynnum and that area as well.
Okay.
Just something about being near the water that I like. And both of them are a little bit quieter. We do a lot of auctions on the coast, but the coast is a bit busy.
Okay.
But I think either of the Baysides would be my favourite.
Yeah, excellent. All right. And so what's your favourite place to go?
The Gabba.
The world.
When the Lions are playing
in
the
the world,
Hawks.
you'd go. Ouch.
or anywhere where the Lions play the Hawks. No, favourite place in the world. I've been to America quite a few times. I really like America. I'm actually a big NFL fan as well, so I've been in Minnesota a lot because I follow the Vikings. So if I had the choice of going on a trip anywhere, I'd probably go to Minnesota and watch the Vikings.
What is it about Minnesota that you love?
Just, it's so different to here. Everything's different. It snows, which you don't get here. It's just America's different. There's a lot of similarities. We speak the same language. We're fundamentally, in a lot of ways the same people, but it's just different in the way that it exists. So, and there's some beautiful countryside there as well.
Now, you're an extremely successful man. Congratulations. Justin's successful in the next few years. He decides he's going to retire early. Where do you choose to retire?
Sunshine Coast.
Sunshine Coast? Why? Specifically, Noosa, Mooloolaba, Kings Beach.
There's a debate that's going on about this at the moment. So I really like the north end of the coast. So I really like that stretch between kind of Noosa and Coolum.
Okay. Sunshine Beach,
Sunrise Beach, Marcus Beach. But my partner, she really likes Caloundra.
Right.
I like Caloundra.
She's a little bit more down to earth.
Well, the only problem I have with Caloundra is I'm not 85. So I think it would be really nice if I was 80 to live down there. But I think she'll probably win. So we'll probably be on the southern end of the coast. But I did see Pat Rafter sold his house recently for $17.5 million. So
goodness me.
If you guys do a few more auctions, it could just be the chance.
What's the most expensive auction you've ever called?
We sold one on Hedges for 8.8 mil.
Wow.
We sold one last week actually in Paddington for 7.35, but I think Hedges at 8.8 is the highest.
Okay, excellent.
Yep.
And you call auctions in New Zealand. What's it like to go over there?
It's good. Yeah, different marketplace. So it's a really buoyant marketplace and still quite strong. They think it's sort of flattened a little bit because the market has changed, stepped back a little bit there, but their market will still be better than ours or superior to ours. So it's enjoyable and it also is professionally challenging. And I think you need a challenge after a while. Like it's different legislation. It's different. Although there's some similarities, it's different buyer dialogues, different seller dialogues, different word terminology around land and things like that. So it does keep you on your toes a little bit because you are constantly challenging yourself and preparing differently.
Yeah, awesome. So I suppose, what does the next few years look like for you? Give us a tip on property, give us a tip on where Southeast Queensland market's going, the Australian market. You've got so much exposure. You probably see more property than anybody that gets to see property. Give us a bit of a rundown on what it looks like in the next few years.
I honestly think it's going to be more of the same. I don't see the market significantly increasing. I don't see the market significantly decreasing. I think what we've got now is normality for a while.
Yep.
I know there was an article that came out recently about Brisbane property prices 20% in 3 years. I just don't think that's feasible. As much as I'd love as a Brisbane property owner for that to be the case, I just don't think that's reality. And I just don't think there's any signs to position the market going down either. I think it's just going to be as it is. I think listings will probably loosen a little bit. They've been really tight this year, and we haven't had the flow-on effect of really tight listings and a buyer frenzy. That hasn't happened either. So I think we'll just it'll be a bit more of normality where we get more listings come to the market. Buyers still will probably have choice, but there won't be a complete dearth either. So it'll just be a pretty fair and balanced market for a little while.
Yeah, that's certainly, I'd echo exactly that. It's probably more a case of the market being able to navigate the financial landscape. Which has changed significantly, but I think, we're seeing the same sort of things for prices. So probably comes back to that education piece and learning the ways of what we have to do today rather than 10 years ago to get property. Mate, you've got a really successful team. Is team where you see yourself in the future with auctions, or do you see yourself still calling auctions?
Well, that's a really hard question. There's probably a little bit from column A, a little bit from column B.
Yep.
I love being an auctioneer, and being an auctioneer has provided a lot of things for me. It's provided, really a life and a house and all that kind of stuff. So auctions will always be part of me in some way, shape or form. But I think the challenge I have as an independent auctioneer is it is a business where it is reliant on you being in it all the time. So if you do want to travel and go overseas for quite an extended stint, it's quite difficult to do that because you can't replicate yourself. And quite often you open the door for competitors to come in and have a free audition for your work, which is never a good business strategy. So I think there'll be a little bit from column A, a little bit from column B. I think developing people is a passion of mine, and trying to change that passion to be developing people who are around you and around you all the time. Our auctioneers, we don't spend a heap of time with them during the week because it's kind of all over the place and everyone's pretty isolated. And I really do look at, businesses like yours, and the challenge that you've got is you've got to be so present and visible for your people, because you can't not see your people because you're coming in this building and they're coming in this building. So if you don't follow through on promises, if you're not seen to be growing and actively, pushing their business forward, then you're going to have to confront that at some point. So I'm interested in your take, mate. What's for you when you wake up and you know that you've got 35, 40 people? What's your staff number now?
I think we're about 50 or 60.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, across the businesses, there's probably a tad over 60 now.
So when you know every morning when your eyes wake up and your head comes off the pillow that you're going to have 50 or 60 people looking at you that day for direction and leadership, how does that sit with you, and how do you carry that without letting it destroy you, really?
The number of people's not the challenge. And I can speak to that probably because I started with me and then went to one person, and that was hard. And I think of tradies that are, go and put their first apprentice on, and then they get rid of their next apprentice, and then the next one and the next one, and they never get past 2 or 3 staff. I don't think it matters if you got one staff member or you've got 60 staff members. You go through different levels of hardness. I think that the key for us is having a common goal that, I wake up and we're thinking about what that common goal is, and then really my job now is trying to rally everybody to be able to see that common goal and understand it and interpret it, and then do great things to achieve that. So,
a follow-up question, if you don't mind on that. This is now my podcast. So
yep, take
Justin
over.
Nickerson podcast. Welcome, Josh Kindred, our first guest. Josh, what's been the most rewarding moment for you as a leader? Individual moment.
Yeah, individually, I'd just go to a lot of our people that have developed from really nothing.
Have you got an example on someone?
I've got a few really cool examples. We've got a young girl in our business, Brooke. She started with us and had never really had a job. She sort of worked in a call center. She started as a receptionist assistant. No disrespect to Brookie, but she did well to get to work on time and have a uniform ironed. We've got a security policy in our business, so we won't fire anyone, which is pretty interesting in real estate to not fire anyone. And so we pursued with Brooke, and she's developed into a really fantastic property manager now. She manages about 90 properties in her portfolio, and she still has a lot of ups and downs, but so many young kids do. She's 23 and, she's a leader in her own right in our business. There's other young people that have, really seeing the young people develop into leaders is probably what gets me really excited, gets my adrenaline pumping. So, yeah. Thanks for asking a question, Justin. Let me ask you one more, and we're gonna wrap up. What do you think's the key to success? You are extremely successful, and you're exposed to a lot of successful people. And Australasia's number one auctioneer. What's your key to success?
Formally, I'm not currently.
Formally, you've
I've been formally successful, not currently successful, but I hope to get back there one day.
Yeah, well, good, aspirational still.
I always subscribe to the secret is that there's no secret, and I know that sounds like a bit of a cliche, but I just think if ever you're looking for the secret, there's actually not a secret to it. It's in most cases it just boils down to how hard you work, and I think what I've managed to do is I've managed to work really hard at what I've done. I know as an auctioneer when I first began, I was not talented. I thought I was. I thought I was fantastic, but the mentors that I had at that time were pretty quick to point out that you were a long way from the mark. So my first auctioneering competition I went in, it was the Novice Auctioneer of the Year for the REIQ.
Yep.
It's in about 2010 probably. So anyway, I've got up, delivered my auction, thought I killed it, walked off, and my mentor was sitting in the crowd, and I said, mate, how's that? All I wanted was validation.
Yeah.
Him to say that was fantastic, mate, best I've ever seen, you're a child prodigy, all that kind of stuff. He said, oh, mate, I probably got you 5th at this stage. And Ouch. I was the 5th competitor.
Ouch.
Yeah. So I think I finished 8th out of 9th. I actually think I knocked someone off somehow, unbelievably. But what I made a commitment to was that this was going to be my career. So it didn't matter how long it took me to get to whatever the definition of success is, and that can be different to different people. But I just wanted to make sure that no one was going to outwork me. And I've been probably proud that that's probably the thing I'm most proud of is that no one has outworked me in that period. One of the things that we do, this is a small example, is numbers are a big thing of our business, obviously, because numbers are kind of the fundamental part of auctioneering. So we've got an exercise where you add up a deck of cards.
Right.
So you add up a deck of cards. Aces are 1, face cards are 10. Give it a go sometime. It's quite a fun exercise. Yep. Good party trick. So it should add up to 340. So as auctioneers, we still do this today where you'll add up this deck of cards and it's a timing challenge to see how quickly you can do it.
Cool.
So when I started, I was 2.5 minutes. That was how long it took me to add up a deck of cards.
Yep.
So my fastest ever time now, which is semi-recently, was 23 seconds.
Wow.
And that's only through working at it.
Yep.
Working at it. So the fastest time ever, just for those that are like a bit of trivia, is 19 seconds. So that's lightning.
So that's and what did you say? You're 23 seconds?
23 seconds, yep.
So you've got 4 seconds to go.
I do, yeah.
All right, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Hard work beats talent.
Hard work and consistency.
Yeah.
Being consistent is the most underrated attribute of everything, being consistent. Whatever it is, just do it consistently.
Justin, thank you so much for joining us. This is the Qlick Podcast. You can join us on Facebook and Instagram at Qlick Podcast. Head over to the website, Qlick Podcast. Thank you very, very much. You're a great man for joining us so early in our podcast journey. Live every Friday, guys. Thanks, Justin.
Pleasure. Thanks, guys. Cheers.